We are live. Greetings, everyone. You know what? I said I wasn't going to say it, but I'm just going to say it. This is going to be a short one. We're going to come in here and we're going to talk about fake foods. Up in the air about whether it should be called foodie synthesis, like photosynthesis. It's like, no, like fake news, fake food. So we should all be informed because what is True Health Live unless it is about informing people so that they can make the appropriate decisions for their own health, right? So fake
Absolutely.
food. Yeah. I am Deidre Sully and I'm joined by my co-host.
Precious Stephanie, also known as Yakira Eden. And so that is what I will probably most likely be referred to here.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't know why I'm messing with a pillow. So we have to say it is nice where we are, and so you'll see I have like a little bit of different. I'm outside. Why not? Right? Why not? Why not get some air and have like a change of scenery? So fake foods. So what prompted it? And I was telling here eating earlier. I was like, it was all these posts that have been coming across my feed, and I'm sure it's because of the algorithm and whatever it is I was looking at before. Like fake eggs and apparently these things are not new. They've been going on for almost 10 years at this point. But like all these different videos of fake eggs, news reports of um, companies creating food from plastic. So trying to make nutrients from plastic, and as a response to like food shortages and things like that, which we saw an influx of like during COVID. Like there, people were down or sheltered in place, if you will, and they didn't necessarily have the bodies or the manpower to actually process the food and do the work on the farms, and so a lot of food went to waste. Which is unfortunate. So they're thinking about these ways on how they can create nutrient dense edible things. I don't even think it's fair to call it food. So we, new synthetic or synthesized nutrient dense edible products, that people can get, and some of it is created from plastic. And I was just like, what? Are they
Right.
crazy? That's
Right.
nasty. And like, and you know why? Like, look at all of the problems that it has caused. Like when they try to stretch things and they put these chemicals in it, and a lot of it, things that are derived from or things that they use in plastic production, it has caused so many different things in people, especially babies. And I know, like, you've done research on that and read about that. So, like, share with the good people what you found about those
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
fake
I
food.
think, right. I think before I even get into that piece, I wanted, and you've acknowledged that, the synthetic food, or edible, I don't even want to say edible product, but the food product, whatever. I don't know what we want to call it. But
What's
those
it called?
products, and peace, Master like peace, Akuya Bisa, those products, I want us to reframe even how we're perceiving this
Hmm.
truth, right? This has been in existence. These products, these items have been in existence since Lucky Charms and Fruity Pebbles in the 80s, 70s. Okay. Because it started with the dyes. It
Natural flavor.
started with the food dyes, the red
Mhm.
40 and and all of those dyes that went into those were the early iterations of what has now only evolved as we know things tend to do if unless they are to die. And based on what you just shared, there's clearly a desire um, for those that are producing mass producing edible items that are being pushed as edible. I'm going to try my best to refer to it
Are
that way.
swallowable things?
So are
Are
they
they
swallowable? I don't think so. I don't think so. And coming, and I will say also, yeah, yeah, no, I don't even know, but I think we're both stressing the fact that sheesh, Fruity Pebbles. Yes, I'm
yeah.
gonna take it back to Fruity Pebbles and Queer Bisa because just so that we realize this isn't new. Like we've been doing this. We've been eating these things for a long time. And so like what Okotiafe or Deidre, the perspective you're coming from is what's happening now, the evolution. But I'm like, let's tie it way, way back. Like let's take it way back. So the reality is when I dug into the I'm also going to include this because when I did my research, I also found you put in the word peace, Chifuya, you put in the word synthetic, and of course, synthetic marijuana comes up, and the implications and impact of of what synthetic marijuana does to the body, to the brain, to the nervous system, and there's that. So I wanted to kind of lay it all out there, and I know we said we're gonna get in and get out really quickly, but I want. I know as I run off a whole list of all these things that I would love, but you know what? That just means that we'll have to come back and part two it, right? So which I'm always happy to join you into and doing. So just to kind of get into a little bit of, you know, I tend to get distracted, and I'm so easily distracted by the chat, right? Oh my God,
right?
What's happening? What they talking about over there?
Like
what they asking? But I just wanted to kind of take a look at my notes. So what I started looking into is the impact of synthetic dyes, food dyes in particular. And you know, my perspective is always like not necessarily the brain, but mental health, right? And we know a lot of the connection has to do with our brain health for everything in our body. And what they found in studies with youth is that the memory and learning and was greatly impacted once synthetic food dyes were introduced by way of course the diet, right? Because that's where these things are deposited, and it causes actual changes to the neurotransmitters. And I was so proud because I'm like, oh, I delved a little bit in my most recent midday affirmative on Anu Life Global Ministries YouTube channel on the, you know, on that brain balance. And we spoke a little bit about neurotransmitters and their role in sending messages to the body. And so when I thought about how food dyes and even our children in particular are impacted, it made me wonder, like, how much of the ADHD and inability to be attentive to instruction and direction is actually coming by way of this synthetic food that is put right before them, that are put right before my children, you know, and other children, or much less what's on the school menu. And I know as you were speaking, what also came to mind, though you didn't touch on it just yet, are the fake food products, also known as too impossible to actually be believed as real or unbelievable meat. Like, I don't want to give them their actual names, but let's lump that up in there as well. So make sure that, you know,
It's
again, this platform is always right. It's like, it's always to make sure that you're being an informed consumer, not just of where you seek your medical treatment, but what you take into your body, period. So look at the ingredients. Start there.
Yeah, because you know a big thing of those too good to be true things that they call meat. And they put
right.
You know, they are synthetic, right? And they're literally pulled out of thin air. And so I want to kind of like even take it back a little bit more, because we're talking about synthetic. What is synthetic food? It's from substances that are chemically synthesized into for lack of a better word, edible products or things, something you can swallow, and then it goes into your gullet and then it comes out as something else. And then who knows what is being absorbed into your bloodstream, nervous system, and all and everything else. And that can range the gamut from, like, the fake eggs. And I'm not even talking about the plastic eggs, but like, things that, make you think that there's something else, because they've used this entire like health movement, and a lot of folks transitioning to being plant-based or vegan, and that's what they're using to, like, really kind of blow up, even though yes, these things have been around since the 80s, like you said. They're using this to really like kind of push it out there with, like, all of this, not really meat and made from all these products. And it's a, like, number one, sometimes it's just an overabundance of soy, which is an actual natural product. Soy, the soy plant is a natural plant unless it's made synthetically.
Mm-hmm.
That, like, too much of anything or too little of anything can be bad for you. So like in some cases, it's not even soy. It's like, different compounds of something. That's what synthesize is, like, putting things into different compounds to make something else. And immediately I thought of, like, like long time ago's days in school when we learned about compound words. You're using two different things to make a whole new word. Well, that's what they're doing with these edible products, or consumable, I should
Right.
say, products and items that are on the market today. And so while it's like, you may want to move into a place where you're plant-based or vegan, which is great, the best way to do it is to actually be plant-based. Actually go to things that are sourced from natural plants, and not something that was made, in a lab coat farm. Because at the end of the
Right.
day, there, as we know with many things, you're not necessarily going to see the side effects right away. They manifest sometimes in our offspring, or they manifest, like, years down the line, at a point where it's like it's too late, and then all of a sudden, then there's more studies to say, what these are, this is what we're finding on people who, ate this or took that, and so then you become another, um subject of a research study that maybe we didn't need if there wasn't all this, like, testing on people. Are all edible plants acceptable food? Not necessarily. Like, I think it depends on your body and your makeup. Like, some people cannot have certain things, like, for some people, the stevia plant, it may not be something that they can sense, their body can, absorb correctly. So not
Yeah,
everything
and
can be for everyone.
right. And then there's also, from a biblical perspective, it
Hmm.
should bear seeds or be able to be
Right,
reproduced organically and naturally,
right,
right? So
right,
if
right.
you can't take a portion of that item, and I know we are, I want to hope that those watching and listening, today and going forward, are clear on the implications of fast food. But I just still had to share this example about, um, what organic food, and by organic food in this instance, I mean food that is not synthetic, right? What organic food, it,
Right.
it should break down. It should, you should be able to propagate, right? To kind of cut a piece, put it in some water, get some roots, or be able to get some seeds and know that it can reproduce itself. Um,
It can
that's that's
fly.
where we can start. Hmm?
Yeah. I
Say it
said
again.
it can
I
be
didn't hear you.
fruitful and multiply. Be fruitful and
There you go.
multiply.
There you go. Recently, I know you were talking about different, different things that we see on social media. I think someone shared a particular woman with me who had, I think it was a 20, was it a 20-year-old Happy Meal? A 20-year-old
Yeah.
Happy Meal that she kept in a
She had
shoebox.
a box.
And she's,
Yeah.
yes, and she pulls it out and she's like, "Here's my Happy Meal from." Actually, I want to say it might have been older than 20 years. Um, oh, poison
No, no.
sumac has seeds. Well, no,
Wait.
poison sumac is.
Nothing poisonous. No, we are
You
not
may not
advocating
want
that
the food
just
that
go
starts with
eat
the
up
word
a bunch of
poison.
poison ivy or poison sumac or
You don't want
anything.
poison ivy either. Like,
Right. Nothing's gonna swell up the tongue and let's not talk like that. Like nothing like that. That's not what we're advocating.
You know what? But that's really taking us to encouraging us to be even clearer. So thank you, Chief Yuya. You need to be informed, right? So getting a book on herbs, and especially if you're like foraging. I've
Yeah.
never done it. I look forward to doing it, but I look forward to doing it with people that are experienced and can say, we don't eat that, we can't eat this, and these are the reasons why. And even when foraging, I want to say that I have heard it's important to be cognizant of where you're foraging, because the soil
Right.
can be like treated, or it may not be the best area to be pulling I was going to say weeds, food, food from. So no poison sumac, and definitely get a book
A
on
book.
herbs, and yeah, start there, or go to YouTube, or find someone who's really skilled and take a class. Definitely don't go for the poison sumac with the seeds.
No.
But what I was saying about that that Happy Meal in the, I want to say it was petrified, but it wasn't even. It was actually completely unchanged.
It
It
was
was
unchanged.
still, the
Yeah.
fries was still in pristine, could have been picked up from the McDonald's a couple of strongs ago or that day. The burger, of course, the lettuce and the actual organic items were removed, but the patty had no mold. The bread had no mold, which spoke to what those items are actually made of. And to think that was 20 years ago. So imagine what they're being made of as far as preservatives and synthetic or synthesized ingredients today.
And one of what was I gonna say about like the how many times like and it's so funny how we like kind of we see these things and we don't necessarily think in no on those terms in the moment. I can remember getting in and out of cars and it's like, a loose fry, before you go vacuum your car. But like a loose
Yes.
fry, like on the days when I used to eat fast food, I'm not gonna lie,
In
like
between the crack, like a month later
it's
when you go to vacuum.
right, and it's like, oh, and it looks the same. We've been seeing this for years.
Unchanged.
Unchanged French fries, and and whatever else, like even like things that are in the home. So we have to start like really looking at labels and really being cognizant of what we're taking into our body. And not only that, like as more and more synthetic and synthesized foods, synthesized nutrient dense, synthesized nutrient products are being pushed, it's like being making sure that we are aware of and understand the new jargon, right? Or artificial food jargon. And a lot of it is like, in the even in the names of these foods, like, unbelievable, or like that's not possible. And I'm trying to like skirt around the actual word, or alternative, even natural flavors, which is something that is, old, like since, before I was born, like the natural flavors. The natural flavors phrase hides a lot of things, right? Ooh, piece of candy. Ooh, piece of candy. The natural flavors hides a lot of things. And we even discussed this in the first episode when we talked about like the hair products and like the phthalates and things like that. Those get kind of hidden in natural ingredients arena. So when you're reading the labels and you're, if you're, looking at this podcast and you're thinking like, oh, am I taking in things that are, synthesized nutrients or synthetic foods? If you're reading labels and you see something come across your basket cart, whatever you call it, and it says natural flavors, you're going to want to call up that company because they're supposed to be able to tell you what is exactly in it. Call them up, and if you have a problem, don't buy the product. If they can't share with you like what's in that product, then it's not something that you probably should be. It's probably something that you shouldn't be ingesting.
Right. And I know when you opened this particular topic this evening, you spoke about food shortages as a part of the history and motivation for synthesized food items described as food.
Items, right?
Items, yeah.
Fake food. That's what we call it, fake food.
Right. But you know what? As I was kind of digging, um, for those that do eat meat, because we recognize there are still those that are challenged still by the decision, or some that it may not be a challenge. This is just how I choose to eat. Um, and it's also important to be aware of and on the lookout for lab grown meat. That is a thing,
Yep.
people.
Yeah,
And
it
so,
is.
lab grown meat, also called cultured meat, is actually a process whereby parts of real meat or animal product are
Thank you.
taken into a lab, and then they synthesize it in such a way that it produces eventually something that resembles the original meat product. But it's not the original meat product. It is completely it's built on something maybe semi-organic, and again, by organic I mean something that you can bury in the ground and that it will eventually go back into the earth, right? You won't dig it up, but at least that let's say that farm animal to some degree will become biodegradable. But when we're talking about this lab grown meat or these culture products, I don't know. I don't know if lab grown meat. Well, I guess cleaner in perhaps
Clean.
perhaps perhaps because it's in a lab and not full of pus and steroids, and perhaps from that perspective. But you don't know what chemicals are being used to cultivate the meat. It is
Right.
perhaps it might be cleaner, but it is definitely a less organic
Right.
food
Like the
product.
environment.
That would be my
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I don't think so. I think the environment
No,
in which
that's
it's
not
being
good.
grown is probably that sterile lab environment, right? That that they need to make sure that no other contaminants are coming in. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's cleaner for the body, because if you're putting chemicals in the body, then it's not cleaner, right? And even if we discuss it from even a biblical point of view, right? The meat, there are specific meats that we are allowed to eat, if you are going from that point of view, and understanding that not everybody does, but you're given particular or very clear rules on like what meats you can and cannot eat. Those of us who do follow scripture, there's very specific rules about what to eat, right? And Torah and law. um the lab is not part of that. So when it comes to like clean and unclean, it's like if they're synthesizing like different animals, what meats are you synthesizing? So we can't really say that it's clean. I'm gonna make sure I
That's
go in
true.
order. He said,
Yes.
what is more sanitized. And then Akuya Visa says, what is the culture that they are using? It's unknown. Like, we would have to call like each lab, like each company, like, what are you using? But a lot of the
Say,
times
hey,
they're using
can I see?
right.
Right.
They're using
And
protein,
then the answer is no.
from action. And then what?
I said, and when you
It
call and
froze
say,
on my
hey, can I
end. What
see? The
did you
answer is no.
Right. The answer would be no. Yeah, it's really, really kind of like questionable, dubious, I should say, a dubious process. Master Manulik says they have food grade sanitizer. They have food grade sanitizer. They do have food grade sanitizer, which is, you know, technically like a chemical, which we'll use like to clean things, like so which is why sometimes I try to use like just apple cider vinegar and water, and that, which is a more a cleaner process for me. She says there's chemicals in the air, soil, and water. There's chemicals everywhere. You're right. And so, like, if we even go deeper, the best way is to like find your own plot of land. That's a whole nother conversation. Finding like your own plot of land, testing the soil so that you can have stuff that has less chemicals in it. And sometimes, yeah, it absorbs from the air. And so there's places where you may not be able to get away from it. But the point is to have as least amount of chemicals and contaminants as possible. What's the difference
Yeah.
between a
But you know, wait, before you go forward, because I know there are like a flurry of questions there, right?
right?
I want to also just acknowledge that yes, there are chemicals in the air, in the soil, in the even in the quote organic products, right? And I do mean like organically grown product that we do eat, even if you don't eat meat. What I think we're and even the question is charging us to make the distinction about is how you can mitigate and minimize your exposure as best you can. It's kind of like when if we're talking about skincare products, yes, we need to maintain our skin and moisturize our skin, but do you go to organic olive oil or coconut oil or shea butter as opposed to the local product that's on clearance on the shelves of your local drugstore? You know, you're minimizing the amount of exposure to those chemicals by at least choosing to use something more organic on your
Right.
body or ingesting something more organic. So yes, even if we buy a
Yeah.
plot of land, that land is going to be right here. And it's quite realistic to assume that the soil, even the heck, the air quality will still be the same
The
air.
air,
We don't
right? It's
get different air because we want to be set apart.
we
We get
don't.
the same air, but it's like the more set apart, the more intentional we can be about our living, and our liberty, the better off we will be. And I think, you know, that would be how, like, if someone goes back into the chat and looks at those questions, um that's something that can, you know, be considered.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. We are sharing the same air, and being that we're sharing the same air, it all gets absorbed back into the water, which comes back down to the soil. So yeah, it really more it's more about how can you reduce the chemical intake that you're taking, whether it is like directly when you're shopping and, you know, making sure you're looking at labels, or even just the products that you use on your body. What this food grade sanitizer
Peace, Margie
question.
Marie Art.
Please, welcome, welcome, welcome. Chief also asked, what's the difference between a farm and a lab? This is an interesting question. Isn't still an experiment grown for animals grown in contaminant who are fed a particular combination of feed? You know what? Some farms do, and this is where it's important to know, like, you know, what's the farm, if you are a meat eater, right? Where, you know, how are the animals grown, how are the animals fed, how are they even prepared to go to market, you know, how are they killed, like all of that makes a difference. Like, you know, there's such a thing as like stressed out meat, like how they butcher the animals, the cow, if you're eating cows, like, you know, how they take them in for slaughter. That's the word that I'm looking for, how they're slaughtered,
Right.
you know. Makes a difference. And you know what? It can be seen as a lab, because this is how, in years past, how things like E. coli spread. You know, E. coli is in the brain matter, and so when they would finish slaughtering the cows, for example, you know, and in taking all the choice cuts of meat that go to the grocery store or go wherever they go, whatever's left over, some of it goes into hot dogs, but then there's like the meat and the bone, like anything that's not edible that can be marketed off and packaged, it goes into a meat and bone meal. And if there was an infected cow like that, it gets mixed up into this meat and bone meal, but it was then fed to the animals, which is almost like, not even almost, it's cannibalizing them because they're eating, the brain matter and the meat of their, like them. And cows are not carnivores, they're herbivores, right? So like they're,
Right.
and happens like when it comes to like the feed. And so it's like, what is the animal that you're ingesting? What are they ingesting? So that's where we
Mm-hmm.
can even go that question that everybody gets when they, stop eating meat, right? And I'm
To
saying
get your
stop eating meat
protein.
for a reason. Right? How you gonna get your protein? And it's like, well, proteins come from amino acids. So proteins don't necessarily have to come from other meats. But that was a ploy, by the meat industry, the beef industry, to sell more beef. Just like, when it came to, there was a big explosion. Everybody eat kale. So there's all these, nutrition people and fitness people talking about how great kale is. Like, so this is where we have to watch, anything that becomes popular. Well, why is it popular? Most likely because the farmers want to sell it. So like, back to the question, sometimes, yes, it is an experiment. So if you are going to be a meat eater, or even if you are plant-based, like it makes more sense to even think about like where the food is coming from. Is it locally grown? Okay, then what are they doing on that local farm to, grow the plants or even feed the animals? Like it's all important to find out. um Food grade sanitizer in the lab to clean the meat off. This is why it's good to know, like, in some books, herbal books, what are some ways that you can clean your products, or clean even, the things that we eat off of, the utensils. What are some natural products that we can use to clean? So like I said, apple cider vinegar and water is a really good way to like soak your vegetables, soak your fruit not so much, because you don't want, too much of the acidic to like seep into the food, and then it tastes like something else. But like, these are really good ways to clean the food. Clean the utensils, clean anything that you're eating off of, instead of looking for the chemical based cleansers to clean your natural food.
Mm-hmm.
These questions are really, yes, they are, and they should, because the show is about like how we can get information so that we can be healthier. Not always just thinking about what's the new legislation out, but like, what are the things that we can do for
Right.
ourselves?
Because the legislation is also the bare minimums, right? And the legislation
It
is
is.
really designed to ensure that there is the image of enough food being available for the people, right? So that they
Yeah.
can continue to be good workers and feed the machine. So that is why there is the inception of synthetic foods. And I know there were several other questions.
Yeah. Like, trying to scroll
So
down so I
food
can
grade
keep up.
sanitizers. Oh wait, yeah, I'm not even sure which one we're up to. So you answered the food lab. So food grade sanitizer in the lab to clean the meat off. I don't know that's what food grade sanitizer is used for, but perhaps it is. I was I don't think it's to clean the meat. I actually don't know what the process is for cleaning meat in a factory, or if there is much of a process. I would imagine there is, but what I thought Master Menelik was referring to by food grade sanitizer is even like the sanitizer that's used to clean surfaces is very different, especially like hospital grade sanitizer, or sanitizers that kill, like, let's just say, yeah, I don't know, whatever. Let's like, there's certain cleanser, and I'm really thinking about the hospital environment. There's certain cleansers or certain sanitizers that have to be worn with gloves, that come with a list of how they should be handled, and it's not appropriate
Yeah.
even to touch the skin. So when I read food grade sanitizer, I actually thought of even just what's used as hand sanitizer, but maybe I'm completely wrong, and I'm not the best to speak on
You know,
sanitizers necessarily, so I don't know.
Yeah, I was thinking like food grade sanitizers, what's used to clean the food. But now that you bring that up, and thank you for the question, it does make me think of just even sanitizers. Like, the reason why we have food grade is because it's to say, like, oh, this is not to be ingested. But even thinking
Right.
about, like, sanitizers in general, like, remember when hand sanitizer, right, first came out, and we had to learn it's not good to necessarily use it all the time because it even kills good bacteria. There is such a thing as good bacteria, right? So, like, when we're using these items or these products that are chemically based, what are we taking away, right? Or what are we stripping that maybe shouldn't be stripped away?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know
Mm-hmm.
that I have the answer to that, but these are things that we should definitely be thinking about as we're shopping, right?
Right.
Planning. Peace Margie Marie Art. Chief says,
Mm-hmm.
well, is we're talking what is we're talking plants? Is not a farm a laboratory for plants and fruits too? Oh, it's a natural it's a natural lab. We're talking about
Yes.
white coat. Yes, it is a lab. You are exactly right. Yes, it is a lab, but it is nature's laboratory, right? So what we're talking about is the white coat labs in a building that is, thoroughly sterile. It's not from nature. It's not greenery. The only greenery is what has been grown in a test tube under a microscope with beakers and syringes, etc. So yes, like, we can look at like the farms as a lab, or where plants grow as a lab, but is a natural laboratory, right? Because even when we think of like cross germination, sometimes that happens naturally. But if it happens naturally, then it's meant to be. But like we can see like pluots, that's not even a thing. It's like a plum and an apricot, crossbreed. So
I've
that's what
never
we're
even
talking about.
heard of it. I'm like, oh, what did you
Call it
say?
pluot. And I think whatever comes first, it depends on how they germinated it. So the plum, I guess, is the more dominant. Like I remember, like when I was reading, like it, and it's a thing. It's sold in grocery stores, pluots, and and of all grocery stores, I won't mention the name, but they were recently, kind of under fire in the media for a lot of their products coming from another country, and they're very known for being whole and organic. So I'll just say it like that. And
I
they
knew it. I knew it. I
yeah,
knew it.
and they carry things like pluots, and I'm like, is that a whole? I don't know about that. I don't know about
It's
that.
a
So it's
hybrid.
like, right, hybrid fruit. So it's not a problem to like go to, some of these stores, but it's because, for some people, like, where else are they going to get their food? Because they may not have the opportunity to farm. So it's really being pushed to be mindful of agricultural jargon, like the new jargon when it comes to synthetic foods. Read the labels, get books on herbs and know what they are, know what they're from, know what they look like, right? So that when you're
Mm-hmm.
in there and you see a label, like, hey, maybe this isn't mustard greens. Maybe it's something else. Know what they smell like, right? We
Right.
recently went berry picking, strawberry picking. You could smell the strawberries. We didn't smell like the chemicals from pesticides. You can actually smell the berry. What it's supposed to smell like. So these are some of the things that we should really be like thinking about when we're buying food. What do they smell
Mhm.
like?
Right. So no, Master Menelik says, if I'm up to the right question, isn't there also poison in the plant since they're around all of these pesticides? Absolutely. So that's what
Yeah.
we were. I think I was just stressing with the earlier question by Chief. It's really about minimizing as best you can your exposure and making sure that we're aware that there are poisons and toxins everywhere. I mean, if you turn your faucet on anywhere, you are getting poisons and toxins in your water, right? Unless you have a home-based filtration system that's addressing that. Oh, is there something in there with you? Okay. I'm trying not to laugh. Don't make me laugh. Um, okay, and then
I don't know if it's organic. He looks kind of um Labrum?
You're gonna make my tummy hurt. You're gonna make my tummy hurt. Don't do it. Okay. So okay, so Chivia says, are there still diseases in organically fed cows? Absolutely. Like, would they only transmit slightly irritated, yeah, irritated cow disease, or are they more susceptible to full-blown cow heebie-jeebies? I'm gonna say it's full-blown cow heebie-jeebies.
You know, so this question actually makes me think of organically fed cows, like with. Okay, I'm gonna go to the next comment when he says the food grade sanitizer comment was a joke. So like I'm thinking like the full blown cow heebie-jeebies might be a joke. But what
Yes,
I
that's
will
why I
say
just say I'm going with food grade heebie-jeebies. Like, that's what it
food
is.
grade,
That one is clearly a joke. Like,
right? I'm like, okay. So, but what I will say is that what the cows and what the animals are fed is really key. And a big thing is, and I know the question was about organically fed cows. And again, thinking about people who may listen to this show, like maybe they're not able to get everything organic, because we do know that things that are organic are expensive, and a lot of that is because the process to actually get the organic approval or certification is not cheap, and so many people cannot necessarily, many uh, local or smaller farms can't afford it. So what I will say is, like, it's really key to know like how the cows are fed, because a lot of times like these cows are fed like antibiotics, right? And so if you're a person that, is not necessarily natural, right? And you're eating meat that is has been like laden with antibiotics because they've been given to the cow, what happens is you then naturally build up a resistance. So when in the event that you actually do need antibiotics, it's really, sometimes it can be difficult to have the accurate or response to antibiotics,
mm-hmm.
because you've been ingesting meat and food that has been like over medicated. So that then transfers to you. So again, like, these are things that we have to think about, like, when we're eating things, and if they're transferring to us like that, how are they even transferring to offspring, our offspring, human
Mm-hmm.
offspring, that then create, part of this conversation, excuse the plane, when we're talking about like the synthetic foods, it even means like how the meat is grown. Like, there's this new salmon, it's actually not new, but there's a group in, I think, in Canada, and they're growing salmon. These salmon have been bred in a lab, and part of the fear is that they will get out into the wild and breed with the natural salmon. And it's like, so then what do we have there? Like, then what are people going to be eating? So all of these things make a difference. And why do they do this? Because, oh, we, there's similar to like the chicken and the eggs and the clone chicken, it's like, well, we need this because these things are in high demand, right? And but they're in high demand because people think that they're supposed to eat them because this is healthier and I'm going to get all of this, rather than really kind of taking a step back. How can I, eat healthier without, trying to get the same taste, or, get, I want to
Right.
be able to mimic what I had before, or I only eat this. So, I'm gonna just, I'm not really gonna pay
Try to
attention to like where
replicate
it's
it.
from. Right. It's
Right.
fine if it's this. And so those things, they actually take a toll on us later.
Right.
Um,
Right.
Staphylococcus
Oh, and
eloquent
thank
cow
you.
disease.
Yeah, she was giving me I was drawing a blank on what hospital grade sanitizers used for.
Oh,
So
oh,
those are some of the
right.
infection staph. Yeah, staphylococcus. Yeah, thank you for
I
that.
don't.
Our resident nurse,
Right.
she knows about
Is
those
there any?
things.
I know, like, once we were having a conversation about the Mercer, and I know that's one of, like, you had mentioned, like, that's like a thing of it, and I'm like, yeah, that's one of my biggest fears, is like, because I know, and one is enough, like, to know people who have contracted Mercer, because it's flesh eating, in hospitals. Is there anything that they can use, to prevent that? Like, what do they use? And I'm thinking, like, well, what is the chemical that they use to prevent that? What is it that you have to use to kill off whatever
Well,
that
that's a
is?
whole, yeah, that's a whole, I mean, I'll just say, without even getting into it, there are national patient safety goals. Well, the Joint Commission, which accredits all hospitals in the United States and other countries, um, they pretty much use Medicaid, CMS, Center for Medicaid Standards, to determine how a hospital is to conduct itself or govern itself. And Mercer is actually a part of what are a higher level of priority goals for every hospital, or managing Mercer. And those are called National Patient Safety Goals. And that's like the quickest and dirtiest version of explaining there are serious protocols in place to ensure that that people don't contract Mercer, and that you shouldn't be overexposed to antibiotics, so that you have a less likelihood of your body becoming resistant to antibiotics, which is what makes you susceptible to some degree to Mercer. But I know we promised to like keep it short, and it's always so good and spicy. So we had a lot of good questions. So I'm gonna let you go through the balance, and let's see where we get.
Some of these questions. Staphylococcus sounds like something from Sesame Street, like Snuffleupagus. Like staph infection, staph.
And it is nothing like that. Okay.
Right. I remember like being an RA in undergrad, and one of my girls had a staph infection. I remember us all being like, "Ugh, cootie!" It's like, nobody wants a staph infection. So yeah, it's nothing that is Sesame Streetish at all, at all. Meat and processing plants is sprayed down with acid. For some meat products like beef jerky is soaked in ammonia. Right. Would you just drink a cup of ammonia?
But this is where being informed is so important. Who knew that? How many have eaten beef jerky? Who was the WWE wrestler? WWF. I'm gonna say WWF because that's what it was at my time. I think they lost the lawsuit. They had to rechange the name. But who was the guy? Like, there was the whole wrestler who was like jerky. I forget his name. Which wrestler it was? He wore red and black.
Yes, and he had like long hair. Because he got endorsed. That was his endorsement deal, like with the beef jerky.
Right. It wasn't Randy. Never mind. Never mind. That's not his name.
Don't know.
Someone will put it in the chat. I know someone's memory is long.
I'm sure somebody will put it in the chat. Yes, and they also would, how some of the meat it would be red, and you think, oh, it's blood. Like, yes, some of it is blood, but some of it is actually like a red dye that they would spray to make it look
red dye 40
to make it look more fresh. But that's actually old news at this point. But if you didn't know, now you know. Not even such a natural lab. Plants don't grow perfect. No, they don't. They grow perfectly in straight rows. And chickens do not inhabit the same spaces as bulls and horses in nature. Absolutely. So this is why, so at least in our community, in our new, it's like, I was gonna say you keep what you kill, but that's Game of Thrones. No, it's not. That's something else. You don't hunt. Right? You can eat what you kill yourself.
What you kill.
Right. You eat what you kill. So if it's not something that I hunted down, for survival, that is part of, meat foods that I can eat, then it's not going to be ingested into this body. Point blank, period. Don't worry. I'm not even going to read that. A lot of foods don't have much of a smell. This is true. I'm going to channel Akoti Marie. True. A lot. And Chief US says a sense of smell is super primitive. We don't smell much. Imagine our sense of smell compared to a mouse or a dog. They will bypass food that doesn't smell right. It all has a smell. This is very true. And if the food doesn't have much of a smell, then that tells you that you should not be eating it. And the smell might just be chemicals. And so it's like, how acclimated have we become to some of these things that we can't even smell them anymore, right? You're very Jim Ross. There it is.
Yes, I saw it. I was like, Jim Ross. I knew it. Okay. And it was WWE. I was like, okay, right. It changed to F. And I'm like, I got confused when the change happened.
Right. I'm like, I don't know. I remember stepping to a Slim Jim. That was it. It was stepping to a Slim Jim.
Step into a Slim Jim. Yes, yes, yes. And it was Jim
His name
Ross.
Jim
Right,
Ross.
right,
That
right.
was
Right, right.
okay. There's beauty in growing old. It was it was it Jim Ross. Well, that's that for beef jerky. Yeah. I hope you stop it. All right. So that is our show on synthetic foods. Let me just go over again. It's create synthetic foods created from substances that are chemically synthesized into something that is edible. Does it mean you should be eating it? Absolutely not. So when it comes to, and this is where I'll say this. This is why when people ask me like, "Oh, are you vegan?" I say no, I'm plant based. And the reason is because like a lot of this, vegan movement has been, as my sister would say, like bandwagoneering, where people just jumping on like, yeah, I'm vegan and da 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 da. And some of it does come from people not wanting to harm animals, which is nothing wrong with that. But then it doesn't mean I'm gonna go to something that gives me the reminiscing of eating an animal by taking in something that is synthetic. If
Right.
you There are so many different foods that have great flavors that you can try. And again, being plant-based or even being vegan or vegetarian, pescatarian, you have to do what's good for your body and eat whatever your body needs. But if that is the case, make sure that you are informed on what that thing is that you're buying, where that meat is coming from, what farm it came from, what the cows are being fed, what those chickens are being fed, were pesticides used in the growing of the fruit or the plants. Like these are all important things to know. And also the artificial food jargon that has sweeping sweeping the market nowadays. Like know what they are. Get a book on herbs, know what those plants look like. So I'll be able to, as always, we'll put some resources in the description box, as well as the blog post that comes out in accompaniment with this podcast. And thank you, Akuya Bisa. She said she can fill us in on the next True Health Live show. So
Yes, that sounds good.
we'll have you on the show so you can give us from the clinician's point of view.
That's right.
And we'll go from there. So thank you all for joining us. This was a great show, and we will see you in 2 weeks, every other Tuesday at 8 p.m. Peace, everyone.
Peace. Peace.